he didn't have his phone, so he was counting on his memory to just get my number and go maybe save it on his phone later. So I was almost sure he wasn't going to remember. I had told my friend about someone new that I had met in Naivasha, and I was going to meet him. So she was like, oh, just be careful. There are these people who are coming from Tanzanian, and they are organ harvesters.
I see exactly why things transpired the way they did, because of what she thought. And I'm glad I picked Yaya Center as opposed to I don't know, some shady location. My name is Johan Kidolezi. I'm a husband and a father. I'm a healthcare professional. Today here I'm with my lovely wife Juliet, who will introduce herself.
My name is Juliet. I am a wife to Kidolezi. I am a mother of 2 boys. I am a pharmacist by profession.
And this is our love story. Juliet and I met at a hotel, I guess maybe a resort in Naivasha called Panorama. I had gone there with 2 of my other friends, and she had gone to the same location with, I think, with her family. That was the first time that we met.
I think he saw me first because it was on a swimming pool, and I was seated because the water was a bit cold. So I was just seated, I didn't want to get into the water, and then he came in with his friends. 2 of his friends, right? 2 of his friends, and he saw me first. Did you see? He saw me first and came and sat next to me, and then we just chatted a bit, and yeah.
Well, yeah, she was a pretty one, right? But I think the reason why I did that was my friend was with his girlfriend, so I was kind of the third wheel in that trip. Not that I was going there to look for, you know, for a soulmate or anything. I think it was because we were sitting on the other side of the pool. It was a fun place, and so I was just like, I need to just, you know, just walk around and interact, because it seemed like it was a fun place to just meet new people. And so I kind of saw her, this one girl who was sitting by the pool. I think her leg was in the water, and I just thought, oh, this person looks like she's having a good time. So I didn't just go in and say hello. So at that time, I didn't quite have a very big sort of like motive behind me approaching her. But it just felt like something I just want to go and say hello. Yeah. After that, I think I asked for a phone number because I knew we were coming back to Nairobi, and I was like, well, so how am I going to be able to maybe be in touch? So I just asked her, hey, you know, can you share with me just your phone number, so that, you know, when I get back to Nairobi, then I'll be able to just get in touch and just see if we can, I don't know, get coffee or something. So and she was gracious enough to give me a phone number on that day. So I'm very glad that she did that. Otherwise, you know, I probably wouldn't be here today.
First of all, the reason I gave him my phone number is I was almost 100% sure that he was not going to remember it, because number one, he didn't have his phone, so he was counting on his memory to just get my number and go maybe save it on his phone later. So I was almost sure he wasn't going to remember. So that's why I was like, okay, yeah, you can just have it and see whether you'll call me or not. But I was sure he was not going to get it after that. So when he calls, first of all, I was surprised, and then I was impressed because he actually did remember my number. So, and then I was a bit anxious because this is someone, I met him at the pool, I don't know him. And when he called, he wanted us to meet for coffee. So I was not quite sure, but I was like, okay, let me just go and see how it goes. So when I came back to Nairobi I think the next week after that, and we met at Yaya Center. Yeah, I believe it's some restaurant in
I think so.
Yaya Center. Yeah, and the funny thing is, so when I was going to meet him, I had told my friend about someone new that I had met in Naivasha, and I was going to meet him. So she was like, oh, just be careful. There are these people who are coming from Tanzanian, and they are organ harvesters. So be careful when you're meeting strange people or people you don't know. So when I was going there to meet him, I was very alert. I was just looking around for is he alone? Is he with other people who maybe they're just coming to harvest my organs? But it was okay. He was alone and he was fine.
I'm glad I chose the accent. There wasn't much of a difference. I think Tanzanian and Kenyans are the same. I guess the only difference is the language. I think Tanzanians, we don't speak as good English as Kenyans do. And so maybe to me it was more of an excitement at the same time, because meeting someone from Kenya, I was like, hey, how is this gonna be like? I think Kenyans are a lot more freer. I think it's easier to actually strike a conversation. I think with the Kenyan, I think Kenyans are more open to strangers. I think, right, more so than Tanzanians. The Tanzanians were a lot more reserved. You don't just go out there and just talk to random people. It's rare for us to do that. So that helped. It was just easy for me to be able to do that. And I didn't know the whole like organ harvesting part. So, but it makes sense when I heard this first time. I was like, oh, I see exactly why things transpired the way they did because of what she thought. And I'm glad I picked Yaya Center as opposed to I don't know, some shady location, because then she would never have showed up. So that was good.
At that point, we were still, let's say, trying to be friends, because first of all, he didn't disclose that he was Tanzanian, and then he I think he wanted to fit into the Kenyan system so much, so he told me he's from Kisumu.
No, I think from Western.
From Western,
yeah.
Yes. He said he was from Western. So, but I realized something, that everything I was telling him about Nairobi and Kenya, he wasn't quite getting it. So I was wondering, is this person from Kenya really? And then he started switching. He told me he's Tanzanian, but from how he was speaking, and he said Tanzanians don't speak as good English as he does. So it was very confusing. So it was just almost affirming what my friend had said, that there's some Tanzanians who are coming to Kenya to harvest organs. So at that point we were friends, but I was very, very afraid of him. So every other time that I was going to meet him, then I started bringing in my friend just to look out for me, more so than just to have fun. But he was great company and his friends, but I was just very cautious around them. I
didn't notice any fear from her in my interaction. I think in her interaction with me, but it became more transparent that the fear exists when I sort of like, I was trying to get this a bit more serious, right? And I do remember this very clearly, because I don't know what I actually said, but I think at some point I was like, well, so let me get some kind of definition around whatever this is, and she pretty much said no. I mean, maybe more politically correct way, but she just said, I don't think this is just not going to kind of work, right? And so we sort of like say, okay, fine, I guess we can part ways, but we'll still be in touch. But to me, for the longest time, I was like, so I don't think I did anything wrong. Or what is that she has observed in that time that made her sort of like, react in that way? Because I thought I did everything fine. But now looking back, it kind of makes sense, right? Because if she thought, wow, this person probably is not what I think he is, then I would rather just not get this any farther. And the reason why I wanted to sort of like try to get this new identity, because I just want her to feel comfortable around me, right? So saying I'm Western, and then of course people say, by the way, you look like you're from that part of Kenya. So like, okay, like, why don't I just adopt that as my local, I guess, identity? But I didn't know that that's gonna mess things up even more. And had I known, I would never have said any of those things. But then, of course, to me, it gave me this question mark as to, I don't think I did anything wrong. So I'm really curious to know why did she not want to be with me? So we sort of like ended things there. Mm. But of course, we just kept each other contacts. But I think we kind of, separated. I think at that point.
For me, I wasn't in another relationship at that point. But the reason why we sort of ended whatever we were trying to build is our lifestyle was also a bit different. So I felt like I don't quite fit into his lifestyle. So it was a bit a bit different for me. So it wasn't the right time for us to be in a relationship. That's what I felt, but not because of another relationship that I was in at that time.
At the time that we met, I also was not in a relationship. I'd just come to Kenya, I think maybe 2 months before that. So I was looking forward to build a relationship at the time. Yes.
It was very weird how we came to link up together again, because it was after like three years later we linked in. I think both of us now, when we parted ways, I'll speak for myself, I got into another relationship, maybe other relationships, and then 3 years later we just bumped into each other. It sounds like a story in a novel or a book, but we actually bumped into each other on somewhere around Kenyatta Hospital, and we exchanged contacts again, because it seems like we had lost each other's contacts, and then we just started talking again, and I believe we had matured. For me, I had matured in terms of what I was thinking, and all this Tanzania story and organ harvesting was a long dead story, and at that point I was ready to get into a relationship, into a better relationship, to say so.
When we met again, having been apart, I think for a few years, I also got into other relationships as well, but I think she was taken in the back of my mind, in the sense that I never thought that whatever we were trying to build had sort of like died. So I was like, okay, I mean, this person is great. We are friends. It's okay to have friends. So now I ran into her. I was like, oh, this is exciting, because then just being able to see her again was a good. It gave me like a good feeling of maybe what could potentially come. When we meet again, I'm trying to remember exactly what happened, but I think at that point, to me, maybe a bit similar to what Juliet had said, in the sense that maybe I also got mature, but I think it was easier for me to be maybe more direct, right? Because I was like, this person, if this person has come back to my life again, maybe God is sending me some kind of a message, and maybe I need to be able to be a bit more serious, right? In the sense that maybe it's not time to play games anymore. This is really, go to the basics and maybe be more clear and transparent of what we want to do. And I thought maybe at that point then I made it a deliberate effort to be able to really tell her like what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what my thoughts are a lot more directly, as opposed to sort of like if I converse in parables and things.
So when we met the second time, I had been in other relationships, but it was just by coincidence that they had ended at that point, per se. And when we come to meet again for the second time, I think the relationship it grew organically. So we just started as hanging out as friends, and then we realized that maybe we got more compatible with each other, and then it was easier for the relationship to grow, as opposed to how it had started earlier, without getting to know this person, getting to understand what they want, what they like. And then, like he said, it was now a bit more transparent, though, in terms of how we communicate, how we deal with each other, and how we relate to each other. The reason I'm attracted to him is he's very intelligent, if I may say, and he's loving. He's a great person in terms of how he treats me and women in general, and his view about women, because I come from a community, if I may say, where I felt like women do not have a say, or women are almost sort of, they felt like a lesser gender. So to see someone who appreciates that a woman is almost an equal to him and respects women so much was something that attracted me to him. And then the way we could have an intelligent conversation with each other, and the plans, you could see that this is someone who has great plans for the future. So among the things that attracted me to him.
The reason why I was attracted, I think, to Juliet was number one. I mean, she's very attractive. I mean, that's like an easy one. But then as I get to know her, I think I was impressed by maybe her values. You don't see them, but I think they come across in how somebody relates to people, what they talk, what seems important to them. And I think she's a lot more grounded, I think, in core values, which was even better than mine. So I thought this person actually can put me in a place where I'll be able to at least also grow in that sense, right? Because when I met her the second time, I think she was in a group of friends, who were, according to my limited understanding of them, of questionable character. Let me put it mildly. But I could see, maybe she's not quiet there, but I struggled with that for quite a while, because I was like, well, what I was told is that every human is an average of the 5 people around them. A lion cannot go and hang out with the cheetahs. You don't get that. If you are essentially an average of people who are around you. So that was a bit concerning to me, because those people, they are fine and they're young and they have to go and explore life, which is completely fine, right? But then for someone who is looking for a soulmate, you have to consider a bit more fundamental ingredients, right? But I thought she has those, and so I continue to like that. So you know what? Let me continue to see how far this can go between the two of us. Our cultural differences, the fact that I'm from Tanzania and she's from Kenya, and I'm from a very specific Tanzanian community, and then I found out she's from the Kikuyu community in Kenya, if I'm allowed to say that. That I think brought some challenges to some extent, but not too pronounced. Not too pronounced in the sense that maybe it was easier for me to not know that, because then I was just essentially a white space, right? For her to explore that white space, and for me, my limited understanding of maybe the cultural nuances of Kenya gave me the platform to not be afraid, essentially, right? Because then I would know the cultural dynamics of Kenya. But I think between the two of us as people, I didn't quite see that as an impediment in how we developed our relationship, right? Because I'm trying to imagine a scenario if she were coming from a different community. I don't think that would have been an issue. But I think what was a benefit to me is the openness and the acceptance of her for someone who is a foreigner. Now looking back, I realized, wow, I think she was probably very, very brave to even do that, right? But I think for me, I think it was a much easier, I think, cultural, union than maybe it was from her standpoint.
During the relationship, I would say the things that were pronounced culturally was, and it came from the expectations, because from a Tanzanian perspective, now that I understand the culture, the women are they're homemakers, if you call them. Most of them, they tend to be very, very domesticated. So, and then from a Kenyan perspective, then we are not too domesticated, most of us, if I may say. And then but he didn't have those expectations, and maybe because he had also experienced other cultures that outside the Tanzania. But what I thought was a challenge is the expectation, because from my community, then I would see a man, then I would see him as a man, maybe from not my community, maybe my family, and then from his side, then also women they're very, in as much as they are domesticated, they're very outgoing. Then the cultural limitations in Kenyan communities, in my community, are not there most of them in the Tanzanian community, like you'd go there and it's okay for women to drink and men to drink and their children, mother, father and children to drink. You wouldn't see that in my community. So I feel like their culture, they're a bit more liberal as compared to mine. So I struggled a bit to understand them and understand, okay, this is just a bit of cultural differences, and also how they deal with each other, because they're very communal. So you'd get like a family member, they can come to your house unexpected. They would come and stay, they don't say when, because for us, you go in someone's house, you're like, I'm coming in here today, then I'll leave in 3 days. Then for them, I can just show up in someone's house and not declare when I'm leaving. I'll just stay until I think it's time for me to go. So there were some of those not so big problematic issues, but of course there's a clear cut of cultural differences. The cultural differences in terms of someone coming to your house, I experienced it before we started living together. So I believe that was a coaching period for me to see, because I remember the first time I went to his house and I saw his family were there, and it was a bit shocking for me to see, because I'm not used to that. But then over time, I think it was a good experience for me to experience his family before we started living together. So it was growth for me to understand, okay. And also I think between the two of us, I like hosting people, I like being around people. So it wasn't too much of a challenge. It was a bit different, but it wasn't too much of a challenge, because of I like being around people and hosting people.
When it comes to the courtship procedures, so in Tanzania we have similar, I guess, courtship activities, but they're not sort of like similar to what the ratio and other types that are being done in Kenya. I think, in fact, in Tanzania it's probably a lot more elaborate than it is here. So it's easier for me to actually go with what the Kenyans do. Luckily, I had worked with some people from a community who became my good friends. So those served as my my advisors as to what you need to do and when and what the process. But I wasn't shocked by the expectations of going through that, right? Because in Tanzania, when you are trying to propose to someone, it's like a whole affair. I mean, there's a whole committee of people and events, maybe 5-10 different things you have to do before you even get anywhere. So I was sort of like used to that, and how that became much easier for me to adapt is because I am I think number 6 in a family of 7. So all my older siblings had gone through a similar process. So by the time it was my time to jump in the pool, I had seen many and being part of many of those vikao and things, right? And having my friend who was also from her community, very experienced elder in the community, was like, yeah, I'll handle everything for you. Just do A, B, C, D, F, G. So he gave me a whole prescription of what to do and when. And I naturally gravitate towards new cultures and experiences. So for me, it was very exciting, because just being able to do that, I found a lot more fun, just doing all those different things. And so it really wasn't a big deal for me to do, more than an excitement, to be honest.
But the reason I'm smiling is because the Tanzanians, they have like this party culture where a wedding, before you even get to the wedding, they have like 10 different things. They like a whole week of just partying. They move from the bride's house to the groom's. It's like a whole different idea of partying. So for him to just come down to the Kikuyu community where you just do the rurasho and probably a few more others, and then to the wedding, I try to imagine it's like a different thing, because even when we were planning our wedding, the sisters kept thinking we're going to have the whole week of partying and then the main wedding, and then we're going to do another whole week of party in Tanzania and another wedding in Tanzania. So they just blow everything that relates to party out of proportion. According to the expectations, we did not party as much. We only had the rurasho thing several times as per the Kikuyu community, and then the wedding. So I think up to date they're still waiting for us to go back to Tanzania and have our mega wedding in Tanzania, but maybe.
Yeah, it's very true. But also feel that we maybe we sold ourselves a bit short. Like if we were to redo this, the whole Russia experience, I think I would have done it very, very differently. Because at the time that I went to see a family for the first time, so I had two advisors, and they didn't quite agree on what the process should be. So one side, the guy was like, "Wow, this is just, we can combine step 1 and step 2 and do them together." Right? And the other person say, "Well, you have to do step 1 and then you can do step 2." Right? And so at the end of the day, we end up combining those two things. And so we did not do a very elaborate event. We were just going there to see the family. We brought all the traditional requirements, but it was very small, right? Not flash in any way. But then what I start seeing after finishing the whole thing, people can do these things, all elaborate ceremonies and there's dressing and all this party. It's an actual, almost like a mini wedding in itself, right? Well, I feel like had I known that, I probably would have done that, because now I'm like, oh my goodness, we had a chance to do like a proper rush show, as opposed to just going and have some food and then hang out and discuss. I think we could have done that a bit more, add a bit more pomp, I think, and flash to it that we didn't do.